Have you ever noticed someone who looks perfectly lean, maybe even thin by conventional standards, yet they're struggling with high blood sugar, a fatty liver, or a pre-diabetic diagnosis? It feels like a massive contradiction. We're taught that being overweight is the primary red flag for metabolic disease. But in the South Asian context, the scale often tells a very misleading story.
It's a phenomenon that researchers call the thin fat phenotype, and it's perhaps the most significant health challenge facing the Indian subcontinent today. You can well have a perfectly normal body mass index or a BMI and still be metabolically obese. Essentially, you are thin on the outside, fat on the inside. This is why so many people are blindsided by health issues. They think because they aren't heavy, they are safe. But the biology under the skin is playing by a different set of rules.
That's a terrifying thought for many, that the mirror might be lying to them. If the weighing scale isn't the ultimate arbiter of health, what is actually happening inside the body? Why is there this disconnect between appearance and internal metabolic reality?
It comes down to body composition and where fat is stored. In many South Asian bodies, there is a genetic tendency to have a lower muscle to fat ratio. Even at a lower total weight, there's often a higher percentage of body fat, particularly visceral fat. That's the dangerous kind that wraps around your internal organs like the liver and pancreas. Unlike the fat you can pinch under your skin, visceral fat is metabolically active. It pumps out inflammatory signals and interferes with how your body processes insulin.
So it's not just about how much fat you have, but where it's hiding. I've heard this referred to as a metabolic mismatch. Is this something that's unique to the South Asian genetic makeup? Or is it purely a result of modern lifestyle choices?
It's a fascinating combination of both. There's a compelling theory called the thrifty gene hypothesis. For thousands of years, the Indian subcontinent faced cycles of intense famine and food scarcity. Evolution favored those whose bodies were incredibly efficient at storing energy. If you could survive on very little and store every extra calorie as fat for a rainy day, you lived to pass on your genes.
That makes sense from a survival standpoint. Our ancestors were basically built like high-capacity batteries to survive the lean times.
Exactly. But fast forward to 2024. We live in an environment of caloric abundance. We aren't walking miles for water or working the fields for 12 hours a day. We have refined carbohydrates and sugary drinks available at the click of a button. That thrifty metabolism, which was a life-saving advantage for our ancestors, has become a liability in a sedentary, high-carb world. It's like having ancient software running on modern, high-speed hardware. There's going to be a lot of system crashes.
That's a powerful metaphor. The metabolic friction between our genes and our environment. If we know our bodies are primed to store energy so efficiently, how do we navigate the typical Indian diet? It's so heavily centered around grains, rice, roti, poha, idli. Are these traditional staples suddenly the enemy?
Not necessarily the enemy, but they do need a major structural re-evaluation. The problem isn't just the rice or the roti. It's the carb-on-carb nature of modern plates. Think about a typical breakfast, poha, which is flattened rice, maybe with a side of tea with sugar and a biscuit. That's almost 100% carbohydrates. When that hits the system, it creates a massive glucose spike. Because the South Asian body often has lower muscle mass to soak up that glucose. The pancreas has to pump out massive amounts of insulin to clear it. Over time, the cells stop responding. That's insulin resistance.
And I imagine that because we have less muscle, which you've called a glucose sink, that extra sugar has nowhere to go but to be converted into fat, specifically in the belly area.
Precisely. Muscle is your most underappreciated metabolic organ. It's not just for aesthetics or lifting heavy weights. It's a sponge for blood sugar. If you will have more muscle, your body can handle those carbohydrates much more effectively. One of the biggest mistakes in Indian fitness culture is the obsession with cardio to lose weight. People spend hours walking or running, which is great for the heart, but they neglect strength training. If you're losing weight but also losing muscle, you're actually making yourself more insulin resistant in the long run.
So the goal shouldn't just be to get smaller, but to get denser in terms of muscle. That's a huge shift in mindset. For someone listening who realizes they might fall into this thin fat category, where do they even start? If the scale is misleading, how do they track progress?
A very simple low-tech tool is the waist to height ratio. Forget BMI for a second. Take a tape measure and measure your waist at the level of your navel. Ideally, your waist circumference should be less than half of your height. If your waist is creeping up, even if your weight is stable, it's a sign that visceral fat is accumulating. That's your early warning signal.
That's very practical. What about the protein gap? It's often said that the Indian diet is chronically low in protein, especially for vegetarians. How does that play into this metabolic puzzle?
It's the missing piece. Protein is essential for building that glucose sink we talked about. It also has a much higher thermic effect, meaning your body burns more energy just digesting it compared to fats or carbs. Most importantly, protein provides satiety. If you start your meal with protein and fiber, like a bowl of dal, some paneer, or a sprout salad, before you touch the rice or roti, you significantly dampen the glucose spike of that meal. It's a simple food ordering hack that can change your metabolic response without even changing what's on the plate.
It's almost like creating a buffer. Fiber and protein first to slow down the absorption, then the carbs for energy. You also mentioned post-meal movement. Is it true that a simple 10-minute walk can act like a dose of medicine?
It absolutely does. When you walk right after eating, your muscles start contracting and demanding energy. They can actually pull glucose out of the bloodstream without even needing much insulin. It's like opening a side door for the sugar to exit the blood. For a South Asian population that is genetically prone to these spikes, a 10-minute glucose stroll after lunch and dinner is perhaps the most underrated health intervention available.
We've talked a lot about the biology, but what about the data? We're seeing a rise in wearable tech, like the OXYZEN ring. How does tracking things like heart rate variability or sleep quality connect back to our metabolic health?
Technology like that provides a mirror to your internal state. While a ring might not tell you your exact blood sugar, it tells you how your body is recovering from the stress of your lifestyle. If you have a heavy, high-carb dinner late at night, you'll see it in your data. Your resting heart rate will stay elevated, your sleep quality will drop, and your recovery score the next morning will be low. It's real-time feedback that your metabolism is struggling. It moves the conversation from "I should eat better" to "look at what that meal did to my body's ability to recover."
It makes the invisible visible. It's about building a relationship with your own biology. I want to touch on the 7-day reset concept. If someone wants to send a new signal to their genes this week, what are the non-negotiables?
Day 1. Get your baseline. Measure that waist to height ratio. Day 2. Anchor your breakfast in protein. Swap the toast or plain poha for eggs, a moong dal chilla or Greek yogurt. Day 3. Implement the 10-minute post-meal walk. By day 4, start looking at your carb quality. Swap white rice for millets or at least reduce the portion and double the vegetables. Day 5. Introduce some resistance, even just body weight squats or push-ups. Day 6. Eliminate liquid calories, no sodas, no juices, and try your tea without sugar. And day 7. Prioritize a consistent sleep window. Sleep is when your hormones, including insulin, reset themselves.
It sounds like a lot of small shifts rather than one giant, unsustainable overhaul. But I have to ask, what about the cultural side? Indian culture is so deeply tied to sweets and festive feasting. How do we balance this metabolic reality with the joy of our traditions?
You don't have to be a monk. The goal is metabolic flexibility, not metabolic restriction. If you are active, if you have a good base of muscle, and if you usually follow the protein first rule, your body can handle the occasional festive treat. The problem isn't the laddu at the wedding, it's the daily habit of hidden sugars and constant snacking. We need to move away from the guilt and toward awareness. Enjoy the festival, but maybe don't have the sweet on an empty stomach. Have it after a balanced meal, and then go for a walk with your family.
That's a much more compassionate approach. It's about being a conscious gatekeeper of your own health. As we look toward the future, do you think we can actually outrun our genetics? Can we rewrite this South Asian metabolic story?
We can't change our DNA, but we can absolutely change how our genes are expressed. This is the science of epigenetics. Our genes might load the gun, but our lifestyle pulls the trigger. By understanding that we have a unique biological blueprint that requires more muscle, more protein, and more intentional movement, we can turn what was once a starvation survival kit into a foundation for longevity. We aren't victims of our ancestry. We are just using the wrong manual for the modern world.
That's a powerful note to end on. It's about updating the manual. We've spent so long looking at the scale, but perhaps the real metrics of success are how strong we feel, how stable our energy is throughout the day, and how well our bodies can handle the world we live in now.
Exactly. The shift from how much do I weigh to how resilient is my metabolism is the most important journey any of us can take. It's not about perfection, it's about sending the right signals to your cells, one meal and one movement at a time. The South Asian body is incredibly resilient. It has survived thousands of years of hardship. Now, we just need to teach it how to thrive in a time of plenty.
It's been an eye-opening discussion. It's clear that our health isn't just a reflection of our willpower, but a complex dialogue between our history and our daily choices. For everyone listening, maybe today is the day you stop fighting your biology and start working with it. Measure your waist, add some protein to your plate, and take that 10-minute walk. Your future self will thank you for it.
And remember, the data is just a tool, but the intuition you build by listening to your body is the ultimate guide. Stay curious about your health, stay active, and don't let the scale define your worth or your wellness. There's a whole world of metabolic intelligence waiting to be tapped into.
Thank you for sharing these insights. It's time we stop settling for normal and start aiming for metabolically thriving. We'll see you in the next episode as we continue to decode the science of living better. Until then, keep moving and stay mindful.